Amberley Vail is an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, best known for her close professional and personal association with the famous Commissar Cyphers Cain. Vail does not profess allegiance to any particular inquisitorial faction, but her actions are generally those of a Puritan. She prefers safe disposal of Xenos or Chaos artifacts in most cases, with few exceptions, and she considers radicals of any ordo to be barely distinguishable from their heretical prey. Physically, she is tall, blonde, and blue-eyed, and has the powerful contralto voice of a trained singer. In addition to High and Low Gothic, she is reasonably fluent in the Tau, Eldari, and Orcish tongues. She operated mostly in the Damocles Gulf and the surrounding space of the Segmentum Ultima. Her length of service is currently unknown, but spanned for at least a standard century. She first met Inquisitor Vail in 931 M41, and her active career continued past his eventual death in the first century of the 42nd millennium. Vail's first actions mentioned in the Cain archive were in the late 920s M41. After dealing with the space hulk Dolorous Tidings, which delayed her longer than expected, she arrived on Kefia. This agri world had been the site of a major gene-stealer cult, but the Astra Militarum had already broken its military strength, and Inquisitor Vail merely took over from them to root out the last remaining traces. Around this time, she was also involved in a joint Ordo Xenos Adeptus Mechanicus project on the world of Perla, studying the Shadow Light, a pre-human Xenos relic located there that possessed strange, warp-based powers. The Mechanicus Laboratory shrine studying the artifacts was hidden within a hydroelectric dam in the so-called Valley of Demons. Unfortunately, the project was disrupted by an invasion of the world by the orcs of Wag Korbul, which conquered the continent where the Valley of Demons was located. After the area was reconquered, the laboratory shrine proved to have been robbed by unknown parties, and the Shadow Light stolen. On the bright side, a great many other artifacts were found during the reconstruction efforts. Cyphers Cain had raised an army from within Orc-held territory to meet the green-skin threat, known as the March of the Liberator. They had breached the dam in the Valley of Demons in order to take out an Orc horde, and the resulting flood scoured much of the valley down to bedrock, unearthing dozens of other artifacts that had been buried there. None were of the same potency as the Shadow Light, but many were designed to work with that artifact as part of a greater system of unknown purpose, or were Xenos documentation related to its use. The rebuilt laboratory shrine had plenty of material to study, even without the Shadow Light itself. Amberley Vail's first well-known action was the Gravalax incident in 931 M41, during which she helped prevent both the takeover of the planet Gravalax by the Tau Empire and a plot by a gene-stealer cult to provoke a bloody and pointless war between the Tau and the Imperium. It was during this mission that Vail first met Commissar Cyphers Cain, beginning a long and fruitful relationship. She also discovered that his aide, Farrig Jurgen, was a psychic blank, a fact that likely saved the lives of all three during Cain's duel with the Gene-Stealer Patriarch and Vail's fight with the tainted planetary governor. As the dust settled and the Imperium consolidated its victory on Gravalax, Vail saw the withdrawing Tau rescue 2 fire warriors who had been lost fighting the Gene Stealers. She watched in satisfaction, recognizing what the Tau did not. Both scouts were showing clear signs of Gene Stealer infection, and were doomed to spread their genetic curse to whatever Tau world they were taken to. A standard year later, 932 M41, Vail and Cain met again, following the Valhallan 597th Regiment's encounter with a Necron stasis tomb on the world of Simia Orichalcae. The regiment had survived with few losses and apparently destroyed the Necron tomb, though at the cost of losing much of their material and destroying the Prometheum refinery they had come to protect from orcs. At Cain's recommendation, she immediately placed Simia Orichalcae under inquisitorial quarantine. She then spent some solar weeks comprehensively debriefing the 597th troops, as well as warning them of the dire consequences they would suffer from the Inquisition should any of them breathe a word about the existence of the undying robotic warriors to anyone else. Even while the regiment was still fighting to hold the refinery, Cain's record search revealed the refinery was not sited on the planet's richest Prometheum deposits, but on a lesser deposit that was sited directly over the stasis tomb. Vail and her Ordo Hereticus colleague Inquisitor Kuriakin easily discovered which Adeptus Mechanicus Magi chose the site, but were unable to prove that the tech priests were knowingly attempting to gain access to the Xenos tomb. The matter is still under investigation by Kuriakin. Shortly after the Simia Orichalcae incident in 933 M41, Vail arrived on the odd plateau world of Periremunda. It is unknown what first brought her here. The ongoing civil uprising, which turned out to be the work of yet another Gene Stealer cult, or the trail of Ernst Stavros Killian and Magos Matthias, a rogue duo of Inquisitor and Tech Priest identified as the perpetrators of the raid on the Valley of Demons. The Gene Stealer infestation proved even worse than that on Gravalax, and a Tyranid hive fleet was already approaching Periremunda in response to the siren call of the Gene Stealer cult's broodmind. Vail and her sanctioned psyker Raquel succeeded in hunting down and destroying the Gene Stealer Patriarch, disrupting the call of the broodmind, at least for the time being. Unfortunately, the shadow in the warp of an approaching splinter fleet remained detectable, and there were indicators that Tyranid scout organisms were already present on the world. On the way back from destroying the cult's patriarch, Vail rescued the recently arrived Cyphers Cain, who had been ambushed in traffic by Gene Stealer cultists. As for Killian and Matthias, both Vail and the tech priest Lazarus knew that Matthias was holed up somewhere on the planet, and possibly Killian as well. Though partners in the hunt, Vail and Lazarus both hoped to claim the prestige of finding the renegades and reclaiming the Shadowlight. Both sought assistance from Cain, but as Vail was an old friend and lover of Cain's, and Lazarus was a stranger, his choice proved an easy one. This was fortunate for Vail, as an uptick in Gene Stealer cult activity prevented her from investigating the renegades herself. In the following solar weeks, Cain was the target of several different assassination attempts. The first of these, an attempt made by a Chaos Sorcerer, led Vail's party to the mining colony Hell's Edge. The colony had been wiped out by Tyranids, but had clearly hosted Matthias' secret laboratory until then, suggesting that he had somehow fallen in with the Chaos cult to which the sorcerer belonged. Another assassination attempt prompted Cain to visit Gavaron, home of the Adeptus Sororitas' Order of the White Rose, and Vail's retinue came along disguised as his military escort. Unexpectedly, their car was diverted to the Sororitas convent itself. It turned out that the Order of the White Rose was actually in the service of Inquisitor Killian, as the Sisters of Battle were unaware that he was a renegade. They had served as the military force for his and Matthias's raid on the Valley of Demons, as well as their escape from Hell's Edge, and they were the hosts of his new laboratory. Killian had decided that trying to kill Cain wasn't working, and hoped to sway the Commissar to his own cause instead. He revealed to him that the Shadowlight had the power to activate latent human psyches. Once this was discovered, the Ordo Hereticus arguably had a claim on the artifact, but the tech priests voted to remain with their original partners in the Ordo Xenos. Matthias disagreed, believing that Shadowlight-activated Psyker armies would be the ultimate weapon against the Chaos Gods. He contacted Killian, who he knew was a like-minded radical, and together, the pair destroyed the laboratory shrine and seized the artifact for their own use. The pair had been hiding on Periremunda since then, using the Covenant of the Blessed, Chaos Cult, to test the artifact's powers. As soon as Cain and Killian were out of view, Vail revealed herself to the Canoness of the Covenant and informed her of Killian's excommunication. Shortly afterward, she received a frantic vox from Cain, saying that Killian had brought a Tyranid lictor to the Covenant in order to summon a Tyranid swarm that would bury his trail along with the entire plateau. In the battle that followed, Cain, Vail, and their combined party escaped with the Shadowlight, but Killian and Matthias were both killed, and the Covenant of the White Rose was completely overrun by Tyranids. Vail proceeded to destroy the swarm and the Covenant alike by calling in an orbital lance barrage which cleaved the entire Covenant grounds off the edge of the Gavaron Plateau. The rest of the Tyranids and Gene Stealers were finished off not long after this, as an Imperial relief fleet finally arrived. The ancient Xenos relic was returned to Perla, where it remained until the turn of the millennium. Vail's activities over the next several solar decades are mostly unrecorded, except that 4 standard years after the events of Periremunda in circa 937 M41, she eliminated a Harad infestation. During the 13th Black Crusade, Vail discovered that one of Abaddon's subordinate Chaos Lords, Varan the Undefeatable, and his army were headed towards Perla, clearly hungering for the power of the Shadowlight. If he found it, he could manufacture Psykers by the billions, all unprotected by the Emperor's sanction. Reality would be torn asunder throughout the galaxy within solar decades. Varan had to be denied his goal at all costs. Since Varan had thus far easily conquered every Imperial world he had attacked, Vail sent her rogue trader associate Aurelius to spirit away the Shadowlight to safety elsewhere. However, the greater apparatus surrounding the Shadowlight was now too large to move, and moreover, Aurelius' ship was driven out of the system before he could try. Instead, the defense of the artifact fell on the Planetary Defense Force, led by Cypher's Cain. Miraculously, he and his forces managed to hold out long enough to lure Varan into a trap and kill him in a personal duel. All might still have been lost, as Varan's enraged army attacked the laboratory shrine in full force. Unexpectedly, however, a Necron monolith phalanx materialized at the Chaos Army's rear. The Necrons ripped through the lost and the damned like a chainsaw through butter, marched into the shrine as the Imperial defenders hastily got out of their way, defeated an attempt to self-destruct the shrine, and absconded with the Shadowlight. Kane and Vail later concluded that the complete Shadowlight complex was a psychic superweapon created by the long-vanished Old Ones to fight the Necrons, who greatly feared psychic powers and the energies of the warp. A Necron surveillance post had been lurking in the Perla system for eons, hoping to finally neutralize the ancient weapon. Varan's attack had revealed the artifact to them, at which point the Necrons launched a raid to seize it. While not an ideal resolution, if the Necrons had feared the Shadowlight so, they likely had no plans to use it against the Imperium. Better for the artifact to fall into their hands rather than those of the forces of chaos. After Cypher's Kane died, Inquisitor Vail examined his personal effects in order to secure any Imperial secrets they might hold. In the process, she found a data slate full of jumbled files, which Kane apparently wrote during his retirement as a sort of retrospective private journal. Unlike his official memoir, To Serve the Emperor, a Commissar's Life, these accounts were brutally honest about both the redacted parts of Kane's famous exploits and the Commissar's own less than noble motives. Naturally, Vail immediately placed the contents of the slate under Inquisitorial seal. Imperial secrets aside, the Inquisition could hardly allow the public to know that the celebrated hero of the Imperium was in fact a scoundrel and a self-seeking rogue, let alone that those very flaws likely made him such an effective champion of the Emperor in the first place. However, she did feel that her fellow Inquisitors should understand what had made Kane who he was. Further, over the course of his career, he had fought almost every enemy the Imperium has, from the arch-enemy to the Great Devourer to the greater good of the Tau Empire. Vail felt that the Inquisition should gain the benefit of his own insights into humanity's various enemies. Accordingly, she began a side project to edit the Kane Archive, as it was later called. She sorted the unstructured account into a series of relatively self-contained books, and added various footnotes and material from other sources in order to give Kane's self-centered narrative a wider context. As each book was completed, she released it for internal Inquisition circulation. She was pleased to see them widely read, although less pleased to see that most Inquisitors took them as light entertainment rather than the serious food for thought she intended them to be.